Recording in progress. I spent a long time trying to get the distance right. It felt important for my nipples to be present. The whole idea is getting naked. Something about nipples feels exposing. And since I'm not going to be completely naked, at least on this platform, on this medium, this feels like the next best thing. And nipples are just fascinating to me. Yeah. So, um, what inspired me to hop on this episode 2, getting even more naked with myself, is a conversation I had with a friend, Matthew. I will leave his name out of it to keep his anonymity. I'm sure he'll be on here at some point. But we've both been reading books by Stan Groff about spiritual emergency and psychosis and bipolar and talking about madness, dark night of the soul. Like, this is a huge fucking theme. It's been a huge theme in my life for the last 18 months. And now I'm talking to more and more people who are going through it, like in my personal life and actually in the physical realm around me. And he left me an audio message and he said, "It seems to me that there are two ways through this, the way of the artist and the way of the therapist." And that really hit me. It's almost like the only way to work through and integrate and release and be with all this unconscious content that is illuminated during these periods of transformation of the dark night of the soul, of the spiritual emergency, is through expression, and or learning like healing modalities to work with it. And so I'm realizing that like this podcast, like I just messaged a friend and I said, creating right now is what's keeping me psychologically like alive. Like I spent the majority of today, it's 2:13 here in Chicago. Um, I spent the majority of my morning in bed, very depressed. And that's been this theme the last 18 months, these extreme highs where I'll get super excited or I'll be at ecstatic dance and I'll just be like, woo! And I'll be so fucking joyful and alive and lucid and in my flow. And then something arises, a thought, a fear that I butt up against, and then I collapse and I get into this depression, really deep depression of like, I don't want to be here anymore. Um, the suicidal thoughts are still there a lot, but I'm at this point where I'm like way too fucking, I've shared this before, I'm way too fucking curious. And I have this spiritual awareness that like what I'm going through, I know I'm not the only one. I know there's literally like millions going through this. And so I want to figure out what this is and continue to work through it because I know I can. Like, even though there are many parts of me that feel absolutely helpless and hopeless, and I'm going to go into that today. I want to talk about like my shadows, my perceived weaknesses, the parts of myself that I feel are holding me back. Even though there are those parts present, there is this deeper knowing of like, dude, this is exactly like everything is fucking perfect. Of course, you are at your childhood home. Of course, your finances are dwindling. Of course, you're feeling crazy. Of course, you're feeling suicidal. Of course, uh, just of course, like everything is somehow in some crazy way scripted for me to connect to a sense of empowerment. And that's been a big piece of mine that's been in the shadow, my sense of empowerment. And yeah, so I just really wanted to preface this episode with a deepening understanding and awareness that I feel as though the content of this podcast will be largely based upon understanding spiritual emergency, the dark night of the soul, psychosis, bipolar, mental illness, complex PTSD, all these experiences that so many of us extremely sensitive beings go through. And most of us live in the Western world. And so when we have these experiences, we tend to freak out. And then we go to a psychiatrist and they say, oh, it's mental illness. And then we get put on medication, or, like I've been to the psych hospital three and a half times now. And then we think we're broken. And so that's the vision here, is that I can continue to have and cultivate a sense of compassion for myself and understand that this is a spiritual emergence. This is a uh, illumination of my light and my dark that's happening right now, and that many are going through this. And so now I want to speak about the things I don't really want to speak about, but I also want to. Brene Brown says something about shame. She says that shame does not exist when it's shared. And I've carried so much shame my whole life. And I talked about it in the first episode, just feeling like every single part of me is broken, like getting bullied for my eyes, being called a cyclops, and just carrying this unconscious weight my whole life of like, you are a fucking freak. You are broken. You are too weird. You are too expressive. You are too loud. You are too alive. You are too intense. And so there's been shame for that. And then what's been coming up a lot recently is shame around my perceived cowardice and weakness and victimhood. There was a comment that someone left on. I had been in a really, really dysregulated, intense space like a week ago, and I was sharing on Facebook, and I was like, I'm so fucking tired of being dysregulated and feeling like I have CPTSD and I just can't fucking live on this fucking planet. And I was venting, right? And someone commented and said like, hey, you're doing it to yourself. This is an opportunity for you to change the narrative, to unhook from the patterns that you keep perpetuating. And I was rereading that this morning and I noticed how much shame came up around that. It was like this like embarrassment, and then I also felt the truth. Like she had mentioned something about it's time to spiritually mature, and that has created a lot of shame too. Like, how much am I going to resist this transformation, right? Because clearly when I sat with the medicine, like that was not a coincidence, ayahuasca, it was to start a process to bring me back to who I am, to shine light on my light and on my darkness. And I'm trying to figure out or to connect to a way to simultaneously hold deep compassion, because I've never really been able to truly be compassionate towards myself, while also being disciplined and firm with myself. Like that is the reparenting journey, right? And it's like I've struggled with both. It seems like I oscillate between being toxically firm with myself, like I'm punishing myself, calling myself a pussy for not being stronger, right? I'm like, the voice goes, dude, you're 34 fucking years old. You're about to be 35 in a month. You have right now $130. You don't have a car. You don't know where you're going to live next. You don't have a clear career path or vocational path. You live in fear most of the time. You're extremely addicted to your cell phone. You are still taking benzodiazepines to numb your emotions. You're extremely addicted to external validation because you're still learning how to fill your own cup and fill your own needs. So you seek external validation because you feel empty inside. And then that voice just screams at me all day and is like, you're a fucking piece of shit. Like, why aren't you past this? Why are you a 5-year-old in a 34-year-old body? And while I know that there can be objective truth in there of certain circumstances in my life do not feel good and I wish to change them, but shaming myself is not going to work. If it was going to work, it would have worked by now. And then what I'll do is I oscillate between these two extremes, and that's like the bipolar tendencies. It's either like all the way this way or all the way this way. And so I fucking I'll go to the other end of the spectrum. Instead of the extreme self-criticism, it's just like the checking out, right? Like, fuck this, I give up. Today, I was fortunately a friend called me, like a divine life raft. I was about to go for a walk. I took my bottle of pills, benzodiazepines. I was gonna take just like two or three of them and just like fucking just go lay down and just I don't know, not die, but just like give up, right? Like fuck this. Like I don't feel strong enough. I'm codependent as fuck. I rely on other people when I'm alone. I don't know what to do with myself. I'm scared to move forward. And so the other end of the spectrum is that I almost uh collapse and dissociate and just completely give up. So it's like my foot is either so much on the gas that it's destabilizing, or it's so much on the brake that the car just fucking shuts down. And I'm like, how the fuck do I live life? Um, I've had this download many times that I'm here to channel a teaching or a book called From Trauma to Tantra. And so those visions fuck with me sometimes because I go, okay, I have this vision. I know who I am. I know what I'm here to create. How? And then because I'm not doing, or because I feel like I'm not strong enough, or because I feel like I live in so much fear and shame, then the judgment comes in and it just perpetuates this loop. And then I want to just check out. So it's like, how can I, if life is this journey, as I look at my Middle Earth tapestry here, Lord of the Rings, like I love thinking of Frodo and the ring. Maybe I'll get a ring necklace. If life is this journey, like how can I, instead of sprinting forward and then collapsing, how can I walk slowly and steadily forward up this mountain, this never-ending mountain, really? Um, and I realized today that there is this rebellious part of me, this rebellious child that is like, I don't give a fuck if I chose this soul contract. I don't give a fuck about star seeds. I don't give a fuck about the fact that I'm a wanderer or I came here to anchor light. Like, fuck this. And I realized there's still been this part of me, this wounded child shadow aspect that is like, I don't want to do fuck. Like, I literally just want to lay in bed and numb out, jack off, not have any responsibilities, and somehow like it's this sense of like entitlement and victimhood and all the things. And so it's like, how do I integrate that? How do I integrate that part of me? How do I hold that part of me and understand that like it's okay to have that? There's nothing wrong, and yet move forward. I literally saw something today. It was like you cannot transcend something until you integrate something. You cannot integrate something until it is witnessed in an unshamed fashion. So how can I de-shame these parts of me? Because what I've been doing is I've just been looking at these parts of me that I don't like, that have been in the shadow. Like I said, my perceived cowardice, my patterns of manipulation, of pushing buttons to get validation, to fill the void in my heart, to get dopamine, right? Like fucking like the character Bane in Batman, where he has that machine and he has venom that goes into his veins. It's like I've perfected the art of getting dopamine to fill the void. And so how do I hold compassion for that part of me, the addict part of me, the part of me that has been abandoning myself all my life, essentially? How do I hold space for that without shame and then move forward? And I'm trying to figure that out right now without like just judging the fuck out of myself and without collapsing and giving up. And it feels fucking impossible at times. Like today was one of those mornings where I'm just like, fuck, man, how did I get here? How the fuck did I get here? Why am I still here? It feels like I've essentially been looping for 18 months. I mean, I've traveled, I've had these experiences, I've DJ'd, I've had partners, I've gone to events, I've met so many new people. Like my circle keeps changing, which is fucking amazing. That is cool. Like the people that I meet that come into my life, it keeps changing, and that is an indication that things are shifting. But I find I'm just so fucking, it's like this sense of frustration. Um, I was at this event last night. I'll keep this person's name anonymous for now. I'm sure this person will be on this podcast at some point, but this person said, right now you see what you want and who you are, and then you feel like you're here and it feels impossible. So you're in this turmoil, right? Because there is the Kai that I see, that I feel in my bones, right? This Kai who um, trusts, who has worked through and integrated his abandonment wounds, who's not afraid to be alone, who's not afraid to be seen, who's comfortable expressing on stage, who's comfortable being funny and playful, and can travel the world and explore and trust the unknown. And it's like I see that. I've seen it in ceremony. I've seen it and felt it in moments of deep presence. And then there's this gap of like, okay, but where are you right now? You have very little funds. You still feel completely trapped by fear and shame. You feel addicted. You feel like you don't know how to manage your time or your energy. It's almost like my light is trying to come into my body. My power is trying to come back. All these fragmented pieces are trying to come back. And I'm wanting that to happen so badly. And yet there are these unconscious parts of me. Hold on, someone's calling me. It is probably spam. And yet there are all these unconscious parts of me. Oh, that might have cut out for a moment. And yet there are all these unconscious parts of me that are resisting it. Like I saw this fucking meme yesterday. It was like three people rowing in one direction and three people rowing the other direction. And it was like the desire for change and the desire for safety. And it's this tug of war because my soul is like, fuck yeah, let's fucking go. Let's have this adventure of a lifetime. like trust the unknown, like walk out the front door and just like trust the universe and everything is new. And then there's the part of me that wants certainty and familiarity, that these childlike parts of me that are terrified of that. And they've always been present. They've just been repressed until the last year and a half. And so it's like all that's up right now, and I'm figuring out how the fuck to unshame and integrate these pieces. And I know I'll figure it the fuck out because I wouldn't be here if I couldn't, and I'm not going to kill myself. But god damn it, there's so many moments where I'm just like, fuck this shit. I feel like such a failure. I feel like such a child. I feel weak. I feel embarrassed. I'm like, if people saw, I mean, I am really fucking real as much as I can be. And I'm like, man, if people saw me day to day, like if a camera crew followed me around, would people really be as inspired by me as I think? They'd see me like on my fucking phone, uh, freaking out, listening to binaural beats, sometimes going for walks, doing some yoga, calling a friend, creating some content. But like, it's like I look at my day-to-day circumstances and I'm like, what am I actually doing? Am I actually healing? Is healing just a trap? Is there a big action step that I'm just avoiding? Because maybe there is a leap that I can take right now because I've felt the call to go to Colorado, to go to Hawaii. And so is staying here in Chicago limiting me? Like I know there's so much alchemy happening with my parents, and oh my God, the growth and the way that we communicate is profound. Like hearing my parents use the words like, I have a request. Can you give me one moment? I need to take some space. Like that conscious communication, it's like, it's fucking beautiful. And yet, what I feel like I need is to be around people that, with love, don't allow me to hide. Because being here in my childhood home, I can still hide because God loved my parents. When I'm hiding, they can't tell as much because I got so good at it. But when I'm around people that are deeply embodied, not only can they tell, it's it brings me to an embodied space. Like when I'm around embodied humans, I want to be embodied. So I noticed like last night I was at this event, this Law of One discussion group, and I noticed for the first like 45 minutes I was fairly dissociated and I was just in a fucking negative headspace, like super negative, super fearful, just like fuck life, I'm done. And I showed up, and then after like 45 minutes or so, I finally like dropped into my body and I was like, okay, I'm really uncomfortable. And I started, oh yeah, I'm not naked again. I started just like stretching and moving my body and like becoming more embodied. And that to me speaks to the importance of being around people that are more embodied. Soul Tribe is it brings each of us back to our center and then we can live there. But what I notice happens is I'll go to events and I'll feel more embodied, but then I go back to here, my childhood home. And it's a lot easier to go back into, well, familiarity. What's familiarity? Numbing out, hopping on my bed and grabbing my cell phone. Um, just like laying in bed, numbing out, um, pleasing, appeasing. Sometimes if I feel uncomfortable in my energy, I'll go downstairs if my parents are home and just hop into their bubbles because you know what? I don't feel safe in my own energy. So I'm going to go in your energy and support your path right now because I don't know what to do with mine. And all that being said, it's like everything's such a paradox. Somehow, everything is perfect right now. And also, somehow, there is an excruciating amount of turmoil inside of me that I wish I could paint or draw. There's like this fire that just fucking wants to like just get out. I wrote this morning, I'm scared of death. I want to live, but I don't want to die. I want to live, but I'm scared of death. I want to die, but I'm scared of life. And in order to live, which means being more sensitive, which means being more open, which means being more, uh, yeah, sensitive, aware, like checking into the game versus checking out of the game. It's such a responsibility after being so self-abandoned and addicted for so long to come back. It's fucking intense beyond anything I could have possibly imagined. Living feels like dying because it's like I'm dying to who I thought I was in every moment that I choose to show up. And it's fucking nuts. And earlier today, I was like, how the fuck did I get here? Is this hell? Feels like I'm in hell. And no one, I can have a lot of support, and I do. I do. I have a therapist, I have friends, I have events that I can go to. I have, fortunately, some opportunities to work right now to finance my continued healing endeavors. But it still feels like no matter what, there's some action that I'm not taking. And until I take it, it's like I have to jump into this vat of acid, but the acid is love, and the me that's jumping is my identity. And it's not a one-time thing, it's like a daily practice of dying. And I suppose that's what shadow work really is going into the scariest places within with a flashlight and saying, hi. It's fucking crazy. But yeah, for the next person that comes on, I would love to talk about your own journey with healing, awakening, mental illness, psychosis, feeling crazy. Selfishly, it's for my own process, to be honest. Um, Someone is knocking at the door. I'm going to end it here, and I will talk to you beautiful beings soon.